everyone, welcome. I'm going to do a quick sound check, make sure we're all working right now. Maybe, if it will pop up. There we go. Yay, we're working. Okay. Well, welcome to my studio today. We are going to be finishing one of my quilts, actually the Farm Girl Vintage quilt that we've been working on for the past year in one of my classes. And it's finally going to be finished. So today you're going to join me as I video the last video for this class, which is how to put the binding on your quilt. So this intro will kind of be edited out of the video that will go into the final product that will go on our website. And then I'll do kind of all of the videoing that I usually do for those videos, and then I'll come back on and see if you guys have any questions or comments about the process. So welcome, and I'm so glad that you are joining us. If you are hanging out with me, I would love to know who you are, so please comment hi and who you're or where you're from or something like that. Yeah, so funny story I have to tell you real quick, because if I sound a little scratchy or a little mean today, I had physical therapy yesterday in a swimming pool, and afterwards I went to go sit in a hot tub, and they didn't tell me don't put the jets on. There was no sign or anything. My therapist went ahead and went into the dressing room to change, and I sat in the hot tub and I was like, I want the jets on. So I went out and put them back on, and all of a sudden it was getting kind of foamy and a little yucky looking, and I'm I'm coughing a lot, and so I got out and I was like, whatever, maybe I'm just getting an irritation or something. Well, my physical therapist came back in as I was changing and said, did you turn the jets on? And I said, yeah. She said, oh, you weren't supposed to do that. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And she said, the chemicals, somehow there was a reaction with the jets and the chemicals, and it filled the entire pool area with some poisonous gas. Lovely. So I had a little bit of a reaction last night, and I'm doing a lot better today, but I'm still a little clammy, as we like to say. So you'll have to excuse my voice for that. And yeah, funny story, huh? So, well, thanks for joining me. Let's get started here. So this is going to be quite a long video, since I'm going to be doing all of the videoing for this last lesson. So you'll get to learn all the steps on how to do your binding. The final production of this video will be edited, so it'll be a lot shorter, so my members won't have to watch however long this video is going to be. It'll be a lot shorter, so that they'll get the main points of how to do it, and it'll be fast and easy. So real quick, that class is actually open for registration right now, the Farm Girl Vintage. So if you go to journeybackquilts.com and then click on classes, you can see all the classes that we have on our website, and some that are coming up. So we have that one, and then we have a fun short mini course coming up for making a log cabin quilt, and I actually have one of those blocks here. Let me grab it here real quick. So we're going to be making this fun log cabin block, and I do have a quilt kit for this using pre-cut 2.5-inch strips that are called jelly rolls. So you'll get a white and an Easter jelly roll if you want to make this with us. So that class will be opening March 12th. You can pre-register right now though, and the class will be sent to you on March 12th. So, all right, let's get started here. So the first step we need to do is measure our quilt and find the perimeter of our quilt. So I have mine here, and it is an oversized queen, so it's going to take me just a second to get it all measured. So I have it folded in half, which helps the measuring go a lot faster. So that's 35. So it's about 106. So finding your perimeter, the formula for that is P equals 2 times L plus 2 times W. So my length is 106, so we're going to multiply that. And then the width is 92. Okay, so we'll do that math real quick, and just for time's sake, I'm going to use my calculator. So 212 plus 184 equals 396. So that is how long of a strip we're going to need to bind this quilt. Now I usually go over that number a little bit, so that's 396 inches. All right, so now I'm going to use the rest of this fabric that I have for the backing, and I need to clean it up just a little bit, but let's go ahead and finish the math. So I'm going to measure how wide this fabric is, which I believe it's 108-inch wide fabric, but let's double check. Yep, about that. We'll say 106. Okay, so we're going to take 396 and divide it by 106. So we need about 3.7 strips to get to 396. So I'm going to round it up to about 4 strips. Okay. Now I like to do my strips at 2.5 inches wide. So I'm going to multiply 2.5 times 4 because we need 4 strips. And I get 10. So I need 10 inches of my fabric to get enough strips for my binding. Now I like to do my binding the non-biased way. Whenever I've done it biased, let me back up there. When you cut your strips on the bias, it can get a little wonky, and the threads are running a little bit different. So you have to be really, really careful not to stretch and pull your binding when you're putting it on. But when you cut it just from with the fabric, then it usually goes together a lot easier. So let me fold this up and get it cleaned up, and then I need to iron it as well. A lot of that is going to get edited out of this video, so editing is quite the job, let me tell you. I thought I was a quilter, not an editor. I have learned how to do lots of different jobs with this online courses. All right, come on. I've got all my video equipment in my way, so this makes it a little bit difficult. Okay, so I have a little bit of batting and my top fabric left on this piece of fabric, so I'm just going to clean up that edge here real quick. And it might not be perfect, so I might have to clean it up again. Okay, get rid of that one. And then I need to do a quick press on it. And I might just leave it folded for now so I can catch all the layers. Isn't this cute fabric? I'm glad I got some before it went bye-bye. There's still some available, but it's back ordered forever. So I haven't been able to get more into the shop yet. right, now let me see if I made some creases in there. Just a little bit more right here. All right, remember to hang your fabric like I taught you in the first lesson to get your thread running the right direction so that when you cut these strips, you don't have a wonky line through it. Let's see if I can get this large fabric to hang correctly. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to trim up one end here. I need my bigger ruler to clean up that edge. Okay, and I'm going to carefully spin it around so we can cut the 2.5-inch strips from here. Let me get my iron out of the way. All right, so we've got 1, 2.5. Lining that up on the edge here, but I'm also double checking on the bottom that I am square or perpendicular with my markings here before I make my cut. And then let's see if my threads were running the right way. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult with a large piece of fabric. So here where it was folded, it looks pretty good. But there I have a big, huge wonky. See how that was not running the right direction. This big, huge hump to it. So, bummer. We could still use this and just kind of finagle it into place. Or I could cut that little portion out and then piece it together. Let me see if I can redo this real quick and get the threads running the right direction better. It is easier to do this technique when you have a normal piece of fabric that's 42 to 44 inches wide. Okay, I think I have it now. All right, let's clean that edge back up again. And so 2.5-inch strips. Much better perpendicular wise. Okay. Moment of truth. That one looks good. Looks good. Yay, we got it. All right. Yep, much better. Okay, so there's one. Two. Three. And I think it's getting off again just a little bit, so I'm going to clean that edge back up. The way I can tell is that it's not laying perpendicular down here at the bottom with my straight line if I have it just lined up with 2.5 inches. So I'm going to cut it with the perpendicular, and then my 2.5 inches meets up here, but it's a little wider down here, so I'm going to clean that back up so I can make sure I have a straight line. That's kind of your clue if it's getting off and it's just kind of tilt this way a little bit, that you're going to get one of those little wonky bumps in it. Yep, that's good. Okay, so now we need to take these to the sewing machine and piece them together. Okay, so I have my wide open toe foot here. And we're going to take one end and put it right side up. Then take a second piece and put it right side down, but we're going to face it this way, making an L with our blocks. And since I didn't cut off my selvage edge, I'm going to use that kind of as my line. Sometimes you can do that, make it your line to match up to the top and the side here. Now we're going to sew it from the left corner down to the right corner, perpendicular, okay, at an angle. So I'm going to put my needle down in that corner. And then you can use your Seam So Easy flower for this, or if you can eyeball it, we're just going to try to make a line going directly down this way. If you need to mark it, you can do that as well, but I'm just going to try to eyeball it here, using my finger at that point to kind of help guide me to the needle, okay? And then I'm just going to lift my foot. Now this piece that is right side down, we're going to flip it right side up. So get to the bottom of it, okay? And we're going to flip it right side up. Now we'll be able to attach the next piece to that one. And I'll show you that again. So we're going to put our other piece going like an L, so we can sew directly from the left corner to the right, okay? So then I'm going to just butt that corner up to the needle and let it go. I have an automatic lift and lower with my foot, so that's helpful when making this, but if you don't, you just will have to do that manually. Okay, so now this piece that's right side down, we're going to flip it right side up. So I'm going to go to the very bottom of it, and we're going to flip it right side up. Okay, and we have one piece left. So put those right sides together. We're going to sew it at an angle. Okay, let me grab my scissors. Okay, so now we have these all chain pieced together. We want to clip those apart, but while I'm clipping them apart, I'm going to actually cut these at about 1/4 inch away from my seam mark, just cutting that triangle off. And if you want to be real precise, you can take this to your rotary mat and just cut everything with your rotary blade. But it's not that important. That has to be precise. So just about a 1/4 of an inch or so away. And then we need to take this to the ironing board. Clean up my mess here really quick. Okay, so we're going to iron open those seams, but before I get to them, I'm just going to start on one end. Let me find it again. And we're going to fold this in half and iron it down in half. So I'm just going to start at the one end and work my way to the other end. When I get to one of those seams, then I will stop and open the seam up real quick. So just iron that in half, working in little sections at a time. Okay, here is one of those seams. So now I'm just going to open up that seam using my fingers to help pry it open and then iron that flat. So now when you fold that over, it will lay flat against itself. It won't be a big bump inside your binding. So just keep doing that all the way through your entire binding, and I'll see you back for the next step. So that's what I would say if I was doing the video. So thanks so much for hanging out with me still, if you're still hanging here. This process takes a little bit of time, but it's really simple and easy to do. This is where I'd put one of my favorite podcasts on, or a book on tape, or something to listen to help the time go by as you get all of this ironing done. And if you're just joining me, I am doing a live version of my last video that will go in the Farm Girl Vintage quilt class. So this class is a virtual class online. Lori Holt's popular Farm Girl Vintage quilt, and I walk you through step by step how to make every block in that quilt and how to do all the cutting, how to set up your sewing area, your sewing machine. If you're a brand new quilter, we help you with every single step. So if you've been curious about learning how to quilt, we'd love for you to check it out. We have some exciting things coming up here pretty soon. We have another class that's a mini course on how to do the log cabin block, which is one of my very favorite blocks to do. It's so much fun. It's super simple. It's a great one for beginner quilters to learn. But being an advanced quilter, it's still one of my favorites. So I'd love for you to join us in that class. And then we're doing some tweaking to our membership. So we've got Your Quilting Journey membership, which helps walk you through the 5 stages of a quilting journey. And we're going to be adding a VIP membership option to that membership. So much fun. So keep an eyeball out for those things. But if you'd like to join our newsletter, you can subscribe by getting that free tutorial that I have in the description box, and that will subscribe you to our newsletter so that you get all of the new information that we have coming up. Can't believe it's the end of February already. Whole new month with a lot of fun stuff coming up in March. All right, we're almost done with this binding, and then I'll show you the next step. Something I should have mentioned when I was doing this is that you really want to be careful not to stretch your fabric while you're ironing it. Just let it flop over, and I'm just letting my fingers guide the fabric to match the raw edge on the other side. If you pull it, you may distort the fibers in the fabric, and that would kind of make your binding not work properly. So just be careful with that. And if you're just joining us, I'd love to know who you are. So comment hi. Let me know you're here watching. Okay, we're at the end there. My iron's not the only drippy thing. My nose is driving me nuts. So let me push mute on you, and I'll be right back. Much better. All right, now we're going to attach our binding to the back of our quilt. So this quilt's going to probably get used a lot, and so I'm going to just machine bind all of this binding onto the quilt. If this quilt was going to go into a show, I may do hand binding on it, and I'll show you kind of how to do that as well. So let's head back to the machine. Clean up my mess here really quick. Okay, so depending on the size of the quilt, sometimes I use a walking foot to add my binding on. Because this is such a large quilt, I'm going to go ahead and use this as a helpful tool to be able to push those layers through the machine without having to kill my arms and my back to do it. If it's a smaller quilt, I may put my 1/4 inch foot on or use my Seam So Easy flower guide to help guide the quilt through. So let me change this foot out here really quickly. And I have a fresh, brand new bobbin in the bottom so that I won't run out as quickly, because that's frustrating when you're in the middle of putting your binding on and all of a sudden your bobbin runs out. So this walking foot is a mechanical one. It has a belt on the bottom and it plugs into my machine, so it tells it that I'm using a walking foot. So it helps move those layers through my quilt. So I'm going to put my binding over here so I can get my quilt up here. The other tool I like to use are machiner gloves because it just helps me grip the layers of the fabric a lot easier. This is what I use when I do free motion quilting on a domestic sewing machine, but it's also great for doing binding, and I'll usually put it on my left hand to help me keep a hold of that quilt. The other helpful thing is to make sure you get as much of the quilt up on top of your table as possible. That will help hold the bulk of the weight up here so you're not having to wrestle it. So I'm just going to start in the middle of any edge. It really doesn't matter. A lot of times I choose the bottom, but it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to just start somewhere in the middle here. And this quilt is so big it's going to fall off my table, so I'll probably have to adjust it a lot. Okay. And then we're going to leave about a foot or so of a tail of our binding before sticking it under the foot. And I'm just going to match up the raw edge of the binding to the raw edge of the quilt. And I'm going to sew this down at about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I have a nice marking on my machine here that helps me do that. Okay, and then do a little bit of a back stitch to help secure the binding right there. And then you're just going to go all the way around your quilt, adjusting it a little at a time, sewing it at 1/4 of an inch seam. So this process is going to take you a while, so be patient with yourself. And I just try to adjust it as wide as my table is. So you may have to adjust it more or less depending on how wide your tabletop is. And I just hold it with my right hand here, pinching those layers together to where they're matched up. And that way when my hand reaches the foot, then I stop, readjust everything, make sure the quilt's laying flat, get that binding on. Now if you're going to hand bind this, you would be doing this onto the top of the fabric, the top of your quilt. So because I'm machine binding it, I'm going to do it the opposite way and put it on the back. But it's the same process either way. Okay, we're almost to the corner, and I'm going to show you how to turn that corner. Now you want to be careful not to stretch your binding as well when you're putting it on. Just let it sit on top of your quilt. And I'm just holding it down just to keep it where it's supposed to be without stretching it. Okay, so we're almost to the corner here, and we're going to stop about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch away from the raw edge going this way. Okay, so I kind of put my finger there just to be able to eyeball where that is. Okay, and then I'll do a back stitch to hold that in place and then break thread. So I have an automatic cutter. You may have to pull yours out and trim those threads. And then I'm going to turn the quilt just a little bit just to be able to get that corner going. Okay, so here's the fun part. You're going to take your binding and then push it up. Okay, so it makes that mitered corner right here. Okay, so let's do that again. We're going to bring it up. And see, the raw edge is going to match up with the raw edge here on the quilt. So you'll have that perfect mitered corner. Now you're going to hold that corner down while you fold the binding back down on top of it, just matching the fold to the top of the raw edge on the top of your quilt here. Okay, So let's do that one more time. So the binding's going this way, right? And now we're going to flip it up, fold it down with the fold resting exactly on the top here so that our raw edges are matching up on the side. And you'll be able to feel the bump of the fold of that mitered corner underneath. And we're going to sew right after that bump. So you want to place your needle right down into that. So you're going to line up the raw edge with your 1/4 inch mark, find that bump, and then put your needle down right after it, okay? So then I'm going to do a couple stitches forward, couple stitches back to anchor that, and then go down this entire side doing the exact same thing until I get to the corner, and then use that same technique to turn every corner. So once you're done with all 4 corners, I will meet you back here to show you how to attach the tails together. Okay, so that is where I will edit out my videos so they don't have to watch this entire process like you're going to be watching. So if quilting just mesmerizes you like it does me and you want to hang out and watch this, I would love that, because we're going to get to sewing the binding onto the top and also how to put my label on it. As long as Facebook lets us go over an hour. I'm not sure about that. If it cuts us off, I will come right back on, I promise. Looks like we're still rolling. Okay. So lots of adjusting, lots of patience. That walking foot sure does help. Just makes this process so much smoother. Lots of adjusting. Well, I hope that this video is helpful for you. One of the questions I get asked often is how to do binding, and when I'm on other quilting groups, that's a question I see often is, how do I do my binding? How do I make this easier? How do I attach the ends? All that kind of stuff. So hopefully this process will help you be able to finish your next quilt a lot easier. It's helping me because I'm finally getting this video done and I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Actually 3, because this video will also go into your Quilting Journey membership and the Farm Girl Vintage class. And I get to hang out with you all. So fun. I just love this fabric. It's so cute. Hopefully we can get some back in stock here soon, because I think I want to make another project with it. Now this can, my brain's working faster than my mouth will go. This technique is very taxing on your shoulders and sometimes your back. So make sure you take a break to roll the shoulders back, sit up straight, make sure your feet are flat on the floor, hold your core in so that you don't damage any back or discs. Take it from me, I've had 4 back surgeries. You do not want to have a back surgery if you can help it. I'm much better than I was though, so I am grateful for them. But if I can help avoid another one, that's my goal. So here we are at the corner again. I'm going to flip my binding up, fold it down, find that edge, that mitered corner edge, get everything lined up before I put my needle down, and then lock it in place with a couple stitches forward and a couple stitches backward. And then here we go, next side. So I'm going to have to kind of rotate all these layers around. The other tip would be to put the quilt as much in your lap as possible. So your table and your lap. If you just let it hang to the floor, if you're like me, I have found that I roll my chair onto it and then it gets stuck and it won't go through the machine and I'm like, why are you stuck? Oh, I'm sitting on it. Duh. Or just the weight of the quilt going to the floor can be hard on your machine to have to pull it through. So as much as you can be up on your table, if you have to move to your dining room table or something, do that. And then put this layer that's going this way on your lap. And that will help hold all that weight so that it goes smoothly through your machine. And I'm not happy with how that's looking. So let me readjust everything. So if you're just joining us again, let me remind you what we're doing here today. So I am videoing my last video using this live video to be put on the Farm Girl Vintage class that we have on our website, teaching my students how to do binding to finish their quilt. This video will also go onto our membership page. So if you're a member, you'll get this video again. It'll all be cleaned up and much nicer than it looks right now through the live. I can adjust how close everything is so you can see things better and fix any lighting or sound issues that we may be having right now, and make it a lot shorter so you're not having to sit here for an hour and a half or however long this is going to take to make this binding. So you get just the steps, make it super easy on you. So I'm kind of killing 3 birds with 1 stone right now. So I would love to know who you are. If you've joined us, please comment hi and maybe where you're from. It's always fun to see where people are watching from. We are based in Wyoming, which is the state right above Colorado. I hear often, where's Wyoming? So yeah, we're the cowboy state. All right, we're at the next corner here. Remember, I'm stopping about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch or so away from the edge. And then anchoring those stitches by back stitching before I turn this corner. So let me adjust that corner here real quick. Then we're going to bring this up, bring it back down. And I'm just putting the fold right to the raw edge so that we have this mitered corner in here. That gives us this little flap right here, so when we put this over to the top of the quilt, we'll have enough room to make a mitered corner on that edge as well. Okay, and then I'm doing this at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I line it all up and then put my needle down right at the base of that edge, that folded miter cornered edge. And then I'll anchor those stitches by going forward and backward a couple times before going all the way back down this edge. So let me readjust everything. I kind of get it started like that, keep my needle down, and then carefully adjust everything, trying not to pull it away from that needle, of course. But I'm going to put this edge on my lap. This is one of the long edges. Then as much of the quilt on top of my table as I can. And then I just match up the raw edges of my binding to the raw edge of my quilt, trying not to stretch it, but then I'll hold it down here at the edge of my table. That way I know that this edge is lined up, and then I'll readjust everything for the next foot or whatever it is. I've got a little bit of a thread hanging there, so I'm going to clip that. Whew, this quilt is heavy. Got some of my basting stitches still in here, which I think my binding might be covering up anyway, but if they'll come out, I'm just going to pull it out. There we go. It's starting to get heavy. Are you in your studio today too? What are you working on if so? I'd love to see it. If you're watching from the show and tell page, I would love to see what projects you're working on, or even past projects I'd love to see too. So make sure you're posting those pictures in there. And of course, if you're ever needing any help or tips, let me know. I'm always looking for more ways to help you guys. So post those questions in that group as well. It's a very fun, interactive group. There is a post, I think it was yesterday, to show off your quilt, and you could post your picture. And Facebook makes this cool slideshow of it. It's so cool. Just within our group, so we can all see each other's projects. So much fun. But of course, you can make your own post too. You don't have to post in the post. All right, let's see if I can pull the rest of that guy out. Okay, that was just my basting stitch that I used to attach the quilt top to the long arm, the backing and the batting. Okay, I think we might be at the last corner here. Yes, we are. Yay. A little bit more basting stitch here. Okay, call that good. All right, turn this corner. Oh, I forgot my label. I guess I'm going to put it right here. So I have these fun little tags to put on my quilts as my label. So I'm going to do this corner first. And then I like to put it in the corner somewhere. So I'm just going to put it right here. Okay. Then we're getting close to the other tails, so I'm going to get a little bit closer before I stop. And then I'll show you how to flip those. Maybe just a little closer. It's got to be this happy medium. You don't want it too close, but you don't want it too far away. Okay, maybe just a little tiny bit more. All right, now I'm going to back stitch right here. And this is where the video will pick back up, so it might sound silly, but this is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to move back over here. Okay, now we are done with binding all the way up into our tails here. So leave about a foot or so between your tails so that you can attach these together. So here is the trick. Grab your scissors. And I'm going to trim off just a little bit of my tail here and use this as my measuring tool. Now you could just use your ruler if you want to, but I just like to do it this way because we're going to cut some of that off anyway. So, and actually I might cut off a little bit more towards the center, so I have more of a center mark here. Okay, so here is one piece of my tail, right? And I'm going to match that raw edge I just cut with the edge of my binding, opening it up so that I have that 2.5 inch width, okay? Then I'm going to put the other piece of binding on top of that. And then right where that is sticking out is where I'm going to clip it. Okay, and you might have to try to get that a little straighter, but it doesn't have to be too perfect. Okay, so now we have our tails are going to match up with that 2.5 inch seam allowance in between here. Okay, so now here comes a tricky part. So the way I learned it is that you're going to take the right piece, open it up, and flip it so that it is right side up. Okay, this is probably really hard to see on the quilt, so let's do it like this. So your binding's here, you're going to open it up and flip it so it's right side up, kind of hanging down here. And then you're going to open this one and put it right sides together. You might have to maneuver your quilt a little bit so you can get those matched up. And then we're going to sew this down. So now that we flip those over, you're going to flip it up. Okay, I know that was super confusing. And then we're going to sew it from this left corner over to the right. So let's do that one more time, okay? So we've got the right piece, open it up, flip it so it's right side up, okay? Then you're going to take the left piece, open it, and put it right sides together. Then I just kind of hold it with my fingers and then flip it up so that this point here is what we're going to cut off once we're done sewing it, okay? So if you need to take a pin and pin those together so that you can remember which side is up on your machine, it's going to be this right side that is up on top. So I don't know why I do it the way I do it. You probably could do it this way, where you open this one, flip it up, and then match this. That would make a lot more sense. For some reason, the way I learned it, she taught it that way, and it just stuck in my brain, and that's the way I've always done it. So hopefully, maybe now I can change my mind, right? So the left one is up, and the right one is on top of it. So if you need to pin that, go ahead and pin that, and then we're going to sew it from that left corner to the right. So I'm just going to try to pinch this and then take it to the machine. All right, get all those layers up there. Try to finagle that. Okay. Now I'm probably going to have to readjust this so that those raw edges are matching together. So we make kind of this box right here, right? And then I'm going to lower my needle into that point. And this is where your Seam So Easy flower could get handy, so you have that straight line, unless your machine already has a straight line marked on it. But I'm just going to put my finger right there on that point and use that as my guide to get through to the needle. So it's going at an angle. Okay. Now before we clip that corner off here, we want to make sure that we did it correctly. So go ahead and straighten your binding out on your fabric. Make sure that it's tucked in there correctly and that it's not too loose and wonky, that it just lays exactly flat on there. If it's a little bit loose, like there's too much fabric, you may have to trim just a little bit more, maybe just a hair. So go ahead and get your favorite friend out, Jack the Ripper, and rip that apart and fix that. Otherwise, you may have a little bit of a bump on your binding like this when you bind it over. And that's okay, especially if it's not a show quilt and it's just something you want to love on. That's totally fine. So I'm going to grab my scissors again. Oh no, we froze. Hopefully it didn't freeze for too long. I'm not sure if it's the cameras or what that makes it freezing, but it's driving me crazy. Okay, so now we're going to just trim away that triangle about 1/4 of an inch away. You could take this to your ironing board now and open that up if you would like to, but I kind of get lazy once I get to this point and I'm just done and over it already. So I just kind of try to lay it flat. So I'm going to start back here where I ended, go forward, do a little bit of back stitch to secure those stitches. And then I'll lay one of the flaps down going forward. Sew it down and then go to the next one and kind of lay it going up or going down. Either way, I think I usually go going up this way. And then you just keep going till you get to your starting point. Let me adjust the quilt again. It kind of gets stuck. And then do another back stitch All right, now your binding is attached to the back. Great job. So now we need to put it over to the front. So if you were doing it the way I am, I'm just going to machine bind this down. If you were going to hand bind this, you would do this step on the opposite side. So you would want to sew your binding to the top and then flip it over and sew it to the back. Oh man, we keep doing that. Come on. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a quilter, not a tech person. Okay, let me grab my glove here. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over. And just start right here. I'm going to try to make note of where my label is on the back here. So there it is. I don't really want to sew over that. So once I get to that point, I want to flip that label open. So maybe I'll start closer to it so I don't forget. Okay, so I'm going to just flip this over and we're going to match this raw edge either with your sewing mark here, but I tend to go all the way over so that my batting hits the edge of my binding. The only problem with that is that when you sew down your binding, you'll have a seam line on the back. To me, I don't care about that. That's totally fine. To other quilters, that might be a problem. So it's totally up to you, your preference on how to do this. I like this because it just makes a clean line, and I'm sure to get it straight, and it makes a good frame around my quilt. So I'm just going to pull that all the way over, and I'm actually going to change my needle position to be on the left side so that the majority of my binding is underneath the foot. Let me readjust this. Sometimes it takes a little bit of persuasion. Okay, I'm going to lower the needle down. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to kind of flip that corner up and push that corner down inside and flip my label out so that I don't accidentally sew it down. And then I'm just going to press with my left hand, get that quilt to lay flat while I pull the binding out and down. And lowering my foot would be helpful. And you can do a back stitch here if you want to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And then I'm just going to slowly, carefully work my binding around under the needle as close to that folded edge as possible. You could do a decorative stitch here or a blanket stitch or something else. I tend to just do a straight stitch. It's acting funny. I think we might be losing our bobbin or out of bobbin. Let's see if I can bring that back up. When in doubt, just rethread. Sometimes machines have a mind of their own and they want to do something wonky. Okay, try that again. So the top is what takes the longest because you want to just be as careful as possible to hit that edge. Okay. Oh man, it is not liking it. So as I get to the corner, see how I just straightened out this line of fabric so that I have this mitered edge right here. So when you straighten it out like this and then tuck it as close to this line as possible to your raw edge, you'll get that perfect mitered corner to your quilt. And you may not be able to see this in the live, but you'll be able to see this in the lesson video because I'll be able to zoom into it a lot better. So there's our mitered edge, and let's see if I can get my machine to sew it. So once I hit that corner, I actually do like to go up the corner to secure it in place, especially if this is a quilt that's going to be used a lot or used on a bed, which this one probably will be eventually. It might get displayed for a little while. And then I'm going to turn that corner. So again, flatten out your raw edge and then bring that binding up and over and just slowly go around. So I just do a couple inches at a time to make sure that the binding is staying in place where I want it to be. So that's how I like to do my machine binding. And you'll just do that all the way around. Same thing with each corner. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I can let you go now if you need to. Make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter so you don't miss out on upcoming classes and all the next cool stuff we have happening in March with classes and courses and memberships and all the things. And I just appreciate you all, and thanks for hanging out with me today, watching me make this last video to go into our courses. And I hope that it helped you. Let me know if this tutorial was helpful for you in the comments. And have a great day. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and healthy. See you later. Okay, I'm getting to a corner again. So I'm going to push that corner down, and then I'm going to push the binding down so it makes this angle. And then once I get a little bit closer, I will flip up this side of the binding. Make sure to hold that down. Sometimes it takes a little practice to get that just perfect, and then you'll see that that corner matches up to the corner there, so we have this nice mitered edge to our binding. And then I'm going to sew up, going as close to the side as you can. You could do that by hand as well. And then turn this corner. If you didn't want to see your stitches, sewing this by hand would be best. We're at the next corner now. I think I'll get past this one and then take a break because my shoulders are on fire. This girl is on fire. Alrighty, let's take a break for a second. See how much further we have to go. Holy boy. Still have 2 more rows, 2 more sections. We're halfway done. Okay. Well, thanks again for joining me if you're still hanging out with me. Yeah, you. Good job. We're at quite a long time. 1.5 hours pretty much. So, hi Kendra. Yeah, my quilt's looking really cool. So I'll take it off and show you so far what it looks like. So you can see the back right here has this line from the top stitching of the binding, but that's okay. I don't mind that. I can switch the camera here and you can see some of the top. So this was such a fun quilt to make. One of my favorite blocks here. It's mason jar blocks, the pinwheel blocks. I love variety. I am learning more and more that I need variety. Like when I make dinner, it's usually a different recipe every night because I just love trying new things. And so a sampler quilt like this is my jam because there are so many different kinds of blocks within this quilt. So the Underground Railroad quilt was awesome because of the same thing. And Farm Girl Vintage 2 is going to be the same way once I get to that. So let me know in the comments if you would like another class of Farm Girl Vintage. So we have this one, that's Farm Girl Vintage 1, the first book. And then we could also do the second one someday, possibly. I'm working on getting all of the 5 steps to your Quilting Journey membership finished up here soon, hopefully. So cute. And I will have more information about all of that stuff in our newsletter probably next week. We'll have a whole bunch of new stuff coming out that's going to be helpful for you guys. So thanks so much for joining me today. Thanks for hanging out with me this long and watching as we put the binding on this awesome quilt. I can't wait to be able to hang it up and display it in my long arming room downstairs for a while and then possibly use it on somebody's bed. We'll see. So I hope you guys have a great week and let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you go to the show and tell page and show us what you are working on as well. So we'll talk to you guys next week. See you later.